There's obviously a huge difference between being a big puncher in MMA and being a big puncher in boxing. The Conor McGregor Floyd Mayweather contest on the weekend proves it, because McGregor is naturally 20 pounds heavier than Floyd, and yet he hit Floyd with his best shots, and Floyd, an old Floyd, walked through his best shots. A small, old man in Mayweather just walked through his punches like they were nothing, like they were raindrops. Floyd is a guy who has a decent chin, but he's been seriously hurt in fights, particularly against Mosley, DeMarcus Corley. He touched down against Zab Judah. He wouldn't even dream of trying to walk through Canelo's best shots or Maidana's best shots. He wouldn't even dream of trying to do that. But against McGregor, McGregor just did not have the power to earn Floyd's respect and keep him off. He didn't. McGregor's power in boxing is not formidable at all. And imagine if McGregor was actually facing somebody his own size in a boxing ring, a world-class fighter his own size, somebody who's a genuine 154 or 160 pound fighter. I mean, he'd be like Paulie Malignaggi against real junior middleweights and middleweights. He'd have Paulie Malignaggi type power, you know, on a pound for pound type level. So, yeah, McGregor, not a big puncher in boxing. Now, I often talk about prolific punchers as opposed to big punchers. And for those of you who haven't heard me talk about prolific punchers, what I mean by a prolific puncher is somebody who might not necessarily have one-punch knockout power or be extremely heavy-handed. They've obviously got a certain amount of power, but they're prolific in the sense that they're able to get stoppages on a consistent basis because they have a knack of landing their power punches consistently throughout their career. In each fight, they've got a knack of landing their power punches consistently. So they have good enough judgment of distance. They have a good enough delivery mechanism, good enough timing, so on and so forth, to get their shots on to the point where they're getting knockouts or stoppages. That's what a prolific puncher is. Somebody who's got a high KO ratio, but doesn't necessarily have one-punch knockout power. Now, he might have one-punch knockout power because some prolific punchers are genuine one-punch artists, but not all of them are. With Conor McGregor, I don't think he's a prolific puncher in boxing, and I don't think he's a devastating puncher in boxing. You know, because you get the opposite. You get some guys in boxing who are not particularly prolific in terms of they don't score that many knockouts, but they do have serious power. They just don't have a very good delivery system for their power. But with McGregor against Mayweather, Mayweather stood right in front of McGregor. McGregor would have never got a better opportunity to land with full power than he did in the Mayweather fight. Well, you know, not much better opportunities because Mayweather stood right in front of him. He wasn't moving laterally. He was just coming straight forward at him in straight lines, walking him down. McGregor landed some of his best left hands and nothing happened. Not even a little wobble. I mean, Mayweather was a little hurt, I think, from a body shot at one point, but from headshots, no. Nothing bothered Mayweather in the slightest. So McGregor's only effective with them 4-ounce gloves on in UFC against guys who are not used to being punched in the face as often as boxers are. They're not as conditioned to taking headshots as boxers are. This is something Bob Arum said in you know, his own way, that basically generally UFC fighters, MMA fighters don't tend to have as good punch resistance as boxers do. Because again, they're not conditioned over many, many years to take as many headshots as boxers are. So you do find this. And also, it's a case of, in MMA, because you don't take as many headshots as you do in boxing, a lot of guys with weak chins are able to get quite far in MMA by avoiding getting hit clean. Because there are not as many punches thrown in MMA as there are in boxing. You know, in boxing, if you got a suspect chin, you're going to get found out long before you get to the top a lot of the time. probably most of the time, long before you get to the top, if you got a suspect chin, you're going to get found out. Whereas in MMA, you could be a suspect chin guy who's got good wrestling skills and grappling skills, and, you know, you're good at taking people down, so you avoid taking shots. And therefore, you might get to the top with a weak chin, you know. So all this kind of thing goes on in MMA, but long story short, bottom line is, McGregor is not a big puncher by boxing standards. He's just not. The Floyd fight proves it. I mean, can you imagine what the likes of Canelo and Maidana and people like that would do with 4-ounce gloves on? Imagine what Golovkin would do with 4-ounce MMA gloves on if he hit somebody. He'd damn near... I mean, I don't even want to say what he'd do, because it'd be so bad. What the effects would be of a Golovkin punch in 4-ounce MMA gloves. Jeez. Also, another thing which I think might be a factor in why MMA guys probably don't hit as hard as boxers. I mean, they definitely don't train as much on their punching, so they're not going to develop the kind of technique and also the kind of muscles over time necessary to be able to punch extremely hard. So there's that. But there's also the fact that with 4-ounce gloves on, you can't lean into a shot as much as you can with 8 or 10-ounce gloves on, because the 4-ounce gloves don't offer as much protection, so you're more likely to break your hand if you really lean into a shot. Whereas in boxing, particularly in boxing, because it's not only the 8 or 10-ounce gloves they got on, they've also got on a massive amount of padding in the form of hand wraps, which, you know, they have got like a big foam pad, and then they wrap it with layers and layers and layers and layers of bandage and tape, which binds the hand together and also pads it. That, combined with the 8 or 10-ounce glove, allows the boxer to really lean into their shots in such a way that you wouldn't be able to do in a street fight, because you would smash your hand to pieces if you did that in a street fight, or maybe an MMA 4-ounce gloves. Now, some people do have extremely dense bones, and they'd be fine actually in 4-ounce MMA gloves leaning into shots. But a lot of top boxers wouldn't be able to lean into the shots, you know, in 4-ounce gloves the way they do in boxing gloves. So again, McGregor has been knocking people out in MMA without having to lean into his shots the way a boxer does. So he's used to throwing punches in that particular fashion. But that don't cut it in boxing, where there's extra padding in the gloves. You're going to need to punch a lot harder than that. You're going to need to generate more leverage than that to be a KO artist in boxing. So yeah, there's definitely a difference. And, you know, somebody did say to me, it's the same in any of these specialized disciplines, like in kickboxing. A guy who's trained in kickboxing all his life is going to have not only harder kicks than a jiu-jitsu guy or a grappling guy or whatever. He's not only going to have harder kicks than that guy in an MMA cage, but he's probably going to have denser shin bones and just a higher tolerance for pain on his legs in general, because of the fact that he's been doing Muay Thai, and that's really strengthens your legs and toughens them, and you learn how to kick with extreme force because you specialize in kicking. Whereas if you're coming from a jiu-jitsu or whatever wrestling background, you might not really kick as much. So, you're not going to be as formidable in that department as a guy who's coming from a Muay Thai background. So anyway, just some food for thought there, people. Drop your comments in the comment section below. Let me know what you feel about everything I talked about in this video. This is not to try and diminish or degrade Mr. McGregor. He's a very brave man. He did well. And, one of the things that I was impressed about with McGregor, and what I expected from him really, is his confidence level was so high. He had the arrogance to go in there and try and fight his fight. I like that about McGregor. And it shows you how far confidence can take you. This is a guy who'd never had a professional boxing match before. And he was going in there with the confidence of a man who was a boxing veteran. Even though he ain't a boxing veteran, that's the level of confidence he went in there with in the early rounds. So I like that. Confidence will take you so far if you just believe in yourself. You'll be surprised at the kind of things you'll be able to do just by believing in yourself. You obviously have to have ability to. You obviously have to train hard to. But some guys train hard, they have ability, but they don't have the confidence, and they just fall apart quite easily and quite quickly. Whereas a guy like McGregor, a novice in boxing, was able to last into the 10th round. You know, admittedly with a guy a lot smaller than him, a lot older than him, who've been off 2 years, so on and so forth. But still, it's an achievement. So, anyway, drop your comments below. It's your boy Hatman, I'm out.